Hey, all my Taurus friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your August 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Taurus, I'm talking about Taurus rising as dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Taurus sun and Taurus moon. And if you have 3 or more personal planets in the sign of Taurus, this video is also applicable to you. When I refer to a day and a time, I'm talking about the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. The month starts off, I think, with a bang. We have Pluto making a square and a half to Jupiter. And this to me is kind of sort of going to be the background. The soundtrack of August is this deep psychological imprint, potentially power and control of others that is asserting themselves. This is Jupiter in its detriment in Gemini, so it's challenged a bit, but there's something about expansion that's being thwarted, or there's something about our belief system or your belief system that is being challenged. Gemini is your second house. This is the house of your self-worth, the house of your money, the house of your skills, the house of your family imprint and how it affected you and your self-worth and self-confidence. So this square and a half could very much be an imprint that you're not even aware of, but yet it's playing out in some sort of opposition with somebody outside of yourself presenting a challenge. We see also that Mars is coming into a conjunction with Jupiter. And because this square and a half is lasting the whole month, basically, we're going to see that ignited. It gets activated. And as Mars gets closer and closer to Jupiter, there can be a real feeling of wanting to fight for your beliefs, fight for your perspective, to be even potentially sharp or impatient. Mars is quite impatient, or you could experience this outside of yourself. It's quite an interesting dynamic because, again, well, this is your second house, Gemini, and Aquarius is your 10th house. And this is the house of your public image, of the house of your career, your drive, your ambition, your leadership. It's also a house of government, of structures that have authority over us. So that could be what the challenge is something outside of yourself that has authority over you, is contrary to your expansion, contrary to your independence, and you're starting to get annoyed. Because as this conjunction becomes exact, I think this is going to play out in everybody's lives, and we're going to see things in the media playing out. We'll look at this a little later in the month. We also see that Mercury has entered its rulership, but even more so being in rulership, it is actually exalted in Virgo. So it's extra powerful here, and it is making a square to Mars. And this is, for me, accentuating on some level the idea that your creativity, your self-expression, how you think, how you process things is being challenged in some way. Again, Mars representing your independence in the second house of your skills, of yourself, and then also, the cooperative sister sign that is also ruled by Mercury. So this could be workmates, it could be teammates, it could be people that you interact with on a daily basis in some way. Mercury rules our everyday environments. I also want to say that throughout the month of August, I'd be cautious on the roads, not because of getting in an accident. I just think people might have a bit of road rage with that conjunction that's happening here. I don't want to be on the highway very much. Okay, so this is how the month starts. Now we move to the 4th, and the 4th is actually, well, let me back up for a second before I do that, because Mercury is actually stationing. Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 4th, We're going to talk about that in like 2 seconds, but this is important too because as it stations, it's stationing in this square to Mars, and this is where the planet is standing in the sky still with his hands on his hips, feeling ever so slightly annoyed. Now, I also want to mention that there is a beautiful aspect between Mars and the South Node, and Mars in Aries. I had mentioned the sun, but that's going to pass very quickly. That nodal support is giving Taurus an opportunity to be aware of habitual patterns, reactions, ways of speaking to people or people that annoy you. And in that awareness, you can, not for them, but for yourself, experience your own evolution, experience your own shift from reaction to intentional action. It won't be easy because the squares are fork in the road, the tense moment where there's someone's going, I don't agree with how you're perceiving. And in that, it gives you a real opportunity to see your pattern and to assert yourself in a more effective way. Again, Aries is very much about the self, it's the head, and this is your 12th house. So you're stretching to assert yourself on some level in a soul's lineage. Like, how can I be more clear? Your soul has a pattern of believing. And so as we look at this North Node in your 12th house, you're stretching for your independence, or you're stretching to be brave, or you're stretching to recognize where potential challenging energies like anger and resentment have held you back. And in doing that, this transit gives you an opportunity to experience that shift within yourself. Okay, now let's go over to the 4th. Because on the 4th, we're going to experience a new moon in Leo at 4:13 a.m. And this is in your 6th house. I'm sorry, 4th house. Your 4th house of home, of hearth, of nurturing, of self-care, of even, the 4th house also rules our country of origin, our sense of patriotism, our sense of that tradition that certain cultures, they have food traditions, they have holiday traditions. All these things are encompassed in the 4th house. Now we see this Leo house of leadership, this house of creativity. And here's this new moon offering an opportunity to plant the seeds for something new. And when I look at this 12th degree, I can't help but feel as if that 12th degree is representing the Piscean energy of, I want to plant the seeds for removing the fog, for removing any illusions I have so that I can connect to a deeper truth within myself that starts to facilitate the experience I want to have on this earth versus an experience that I'm just trying to conceive on some level. Now, while this full moon is happening, we see that Venus is over here at 29 degrees of Leo. This is literally on Regulus, the fixed star Regulus, the star of the royals. And there is a quincunx from Pluto and a quincunx from Neptune retrograde. Neptune is on the cusp of your 11th and 12th house. And here, again, we see Pluto on the cusp of your 9th and 10th house. Capricorn being your 9th house, Aquarius being your 10th house. So as Pluto moves back into your 9th house and kind of starts to excavate even deeper senses of what you believe within yourself, your capabilities, and what does Venus represent? Your skills, your money, your talents. And here there's Neptune retrograding. This is very significant because these are Neptune and Pluto are technically in a sextile, and they will be for the next 10 years. And they're like, right now, they're sort of creating like the finger of God in this quincunx that is illuminating your self-worth and what you think about it. With Mercury right there, just in a minute. I mean, literally, we are hours from Mercury going retrograde. So this is the most powerful point of this new moon. somewhere while you're here thinking about what I want for myself, there will be some kind of blind side, something that you might not, it might not come right away. And that's why you're planting in the dark of night with faith. And that's supported by the sextile of the new moon to Jupiter and Mars. Mars representing being brave, being willing to kind of look at my thoughts. Do they support what I want, or do they keep taking me back to my fears where I need to feel a sense of security, where knowing that I get a paycheck gives me security, but it doesn't give me growth. And if I have growth, do I believe that I can actually succeed financially? All of these things are kind of on the underbelly here, because what is Pluto? It's the underbelly. And in some ways, Neptune is underwater. And it's this place where we normally want to escape. And we can't do that right now. For my Tauruses, that would be almost like you could try, but I don't think it'll happen. If you physically are aware of something and you try to avoid it, it will keep cropping up. Or if you're unaware of it and you're ignoring something that's been sitting in your face, the awareness is going to come through without a doubt. I just can't help but feel it that way. So we start there on the 4th. Now, also, not only does Mercury go retrograde on this day, so Venus moves into her fall of Virgo. So I have to go a little further in the day. I'm going to go 4 p.m. And here we'll see, oh, Venus hasn't quite got there yet. I've got to go later in the day. Give me a minute. I should have written this down, but I didn't. Okay. Oh, well, we see that Venus has entered Virgo. Again, later, I think it's 10 p.m. when Mercury actually starts its retrograde. So Mercury is stationed here in the sky. Venus has moved into a sign that makes her very practical, makes her want to look at the realistic, how do I get where I'm going to go? And that just even more to me supports the idea that you have to do this on faith. There's no process except following your heart at this point, Taurus, because this quincunx from Neptune, and then Neptune, also Pluto supporting this. This is very powerful. It's like this. How do I describe it? It's almost as if trying to find the answer on the earth plane will just send you into a spin of some kind. Whereas if you dig deep into your spiritual, your inner knowing, that voice inside of you that says yes and no, even when your brain is being contrary, because the square here from both Mercury and Venus to Uranus is in some ways sort of tasking you to, how can I say this? Be brave in allowing yourself to have an epiphany about something. Allow yourself the privilege of understanding that you don't have to know everything consciously all the time. Sometimes it takes years, even decades, before we get an awareness of some kind, and there's a reason for that. So I hope that made sense, because this is a powerful time. This beginning of August sets up the whole month. All the action happens in the beginning of the month. We see that Mars is even closer and closer to Jupiter in your 2nd house, and you've been experiencing Uranus in your 1st house for quite some time. So you know what Uranus is capable of, but here to me, it's fighting your self-worth and the thoughts of your self-worth. It's almost as if the practical Taurus bull is like, if I can't see the row that I need to go down to plant and to irrigate my soil, then I don't know which way to go. And Spirit's saying, close your eyes, close your eyes. If you close your eyes, you'll know which way to go. Okay. Now, Mercury is going to retrograde from the 4th until the 28th. It will go from 4 degrees of Virgo to 21 degrees of Leo. And it will move back into Leo on the 14th, which is another significant day, because on the 14th, we will see that Mars and Jupiter are in an exact conjunction. So let me get to the 14th. Well, I could move to 10 p.m. just to show you that Mercury is actually retrograding on this day. See, there it is. All right. I'm sorry if I'm being funny. Let me go to the 14th. I'm going to move back to 12 p.m. Hopefully that's correct. We'll see all our aspects. All right. So here we see Mercury is retrograded at 0 degrees. Now Mercury is having that quincunx now with both Neptune and Pluto, revisiting some old thoughts, some things that sit underneath that I just don't understand in my conscious awareness. And on this day, Venus is at 11 degrees, which I can't help but notice the numbers. So we've got 11, the master number of thought. We've got the sun at 22 degrees, which is the master number of cooperation. It's also a rather challenging number according to certain astrological theorists. But here I'm going with the number, the cooperation, the pairing with spirit, pairing with the inner knowing versus trying to extract it out of my mind. There's also this kind of really big challenge between Jupiter and Mars, because this could be very polarizing. People who don't stand in awareness will be fighting for their beliefs. They'll be willing to argue till the cows come home. They will villainize people who don't agree with them. And this is all happening in a square and a half, which we started with at the beginning of the month, because Jupiter will continue the square and a half to Pluto for quite some time. And Jupiter is in a square with Saturn. This is going to happen 3 times because Jupiter is still moving forward. But when Jupiter goes retrograde, we will see that it will square Saturn both in December 2024 and then in January 2025. So there will be really, what we're going to see is people responding to any oppressions, anything that's hindering or hindering expansion and growth, anything that is taking liberties away versus adding to them is going to be illuminated very much at this time. There's also, we see that we have a square between Saturn and the moon. Now the moon will move very quickly, but the significance of this moment is the 17 degree. The 17 degree to me is the Leo degree of self-expression, of pleasure, of fun, of enjoyment. And the square could and there's a loose opposition, but it's still very powerful because the idea of Venus and Saturn being in opposition makes in Venus in Virgo is so practical. So it's really going to go back to my histories in my way, what I've learned before, what I know, and it's going to play to the old story. And that's why this is all so tense. And this position from Jupiter and Mars to the moon makes it very emotional. And I don't know why I'm feeling this way. It could be a time where we're just like, why are people making the choices they're making? They seem so obviously not in alignment or in balance. And yet this is a time when people might be acting just ever so out of their minds because their anger has expanded and their frustration is blown out of proportion. Or maybe it's not out of proportion, but they have nowhere to release it or to filter it. So this is a pretty powerful time. I also think that this might be a time when we are going to experience the more things in the media about the United States presidential election. I believe the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is during this period of time. So that might inflame things even more. Let's go now to the full moon in Aquarius, which is going to happen on the 19th. Again, Aquarius is your 10th house. This is at 11:25 a.m. Pacific time. And we see that Mercury is conjunct the sun. And this is interesting to me because the 27th degree is the Gemini degree, a mercurial energy to it. And we're having some sort of illumination going on here. We're starting to see things. And again, I can't help but think that the Gemini energy with Jupiter and Mars is going to expand something within our communities, within the media, with what we hear, we read, we see on our, on our feeds. There's a lot. Oh, wow. Look at the square here to Venus now in Virgo. There's very much, this is a very tense period of time in the community. And it could stoke those feelings within our own, kind of those feelings of, what's going to happen? Are we going to be okay? Is everything secure? And that's where I think those that are standing in awareness can feel a sense of liberation when they go inward to their inner knowing, and then they start to connect with the divine, meaning God, the angels, source energy, the law of attraction, and trusting that frequency, that energy is real, and applying it. And in that application, experiencing things that other people don't experience. We see that there is I'm going to hit Pluto right now, because while Pluto is making a quincunx to the sun, it's making a favorable aspect to the South Node. And I'm going with peace, diplomacy, the sense of feeling harmony. This is your 6th house, Libra. Then it's making a trine to Uranus, which is a long-standing trine. These 3 planets are going to be in a conversation just like this for years to come, with Uranus leaving the conversation first as it moves into Gemini. But as Pluto and Neptune both move into their respective new signs, Neptune in Aries in 2025, and then Pluto later this year in Aquarius, your 10th house. This is very favorable for independence, for new technologies, for new ways of being, and for implementing your spiritual practices as a way, as literally almost as if it was a technology itself. So I think that's important. And I also know that right now the North Node should be making, where's the North Node? So the North Node, it's not making any aspects to Pluto right now. Okay. All right, let's go to, what else did I want to say? There was something else about this moon. Let me click on the moon real quick. Okay, no, that's pretty similar. This is exact. So this feeling of liberation it may be anxiety versus feeling liberation, feeling a sense of comfort from the things that are going on in the neighborhood, in your communities, in your states, in your countries. All right, let's go now to Mercury. Will go direct on the 28th. Oh, I wanted to talk a little bit about Saturn. Excuse me. So let me go back to Saturn real quickly, because Saturn's retrograde and its subsequent 2 more squares to Jupiter is really going to represent Saturn representing authority, drive, government, ambition, leadership, old school, traditional things that have repressed or oppressed, have limited, have restricted. And Jupiter is just wanting so much to broaden the neighborhood. And there's sort of a conversation between, if we think about Jupiter, it rules judicial things, it rules religion. So both of those things may be under review, both personally and on a world stage. And the opposition from Saturn to Venus, and then Venus's subsequent square to this energy is just, it's so powerful that we be brave in our intentions. And bravery is sometimes knowing you have an opinion and walking away from the argument rather than engaging. I really can't help but see how we have this square from these 2 planets to Venus and then to Saturn. And Saturn so we have a T-square here. And that goes on it's all happening in the background. The quincunx from Neptune and Pluto up to Mercury and Venus. And then here we go now with this. It's such a big, powerful time for change. Big, big change. Now we go to the 28th. Now I'm jumping, it seems kind of far, but the dynamics I've been talking about are literally almost every day they're coming into play at some point or another, because the background planets, the outer planets, are setting a tone. Mercury's retrograde is setting the review, and Saturn's square is really bringing up where we feel this sense of contraction versus expansion. Venus is about to enter her domicile of Libra. I think this happens a little later in the day. So let me go to 8 p.m. And there she is. Nope, she still hasn't entered. Let's try it a little later. Go 11 p.m. Wow. Is this the 28th? I'm sorry, it's the 29th. Silly me. I apologize. Mercury goes direct on the 28th. Let me not change it. Here's Mercury in Leo. I got a little mixed up. Excuse me, please. Now, this is interesting because as Mercury stations to go direct, we are still feeling the square between Saturn and Jupiter. And we are wanting to enjoy ourselves. We're wanting to, Mercury is now wanting some respite from all the news and all the news bites and all the things that have felt challenging and disruptive. Mars has moved a little bit away. You know, we've got 7 degrees between Mars and Jupiter now. This is the easing off. Again, this is your second house. We see the wheel is in your natural first house over here, Taurus. Look at Jupiter is right up. I'm sorry, Pluto is right up here on the midheaven in your 10th house of career. So there's a lot of opportunities for, how do I want to phrase it? When I click on Pluto here and Venus is still at 29 degrees, and we just talked about the South Node, there's this change, this epiphanies, the genius within, the willingness to allow for the evolution of things, not trying to keep things staying the same will be the best benefit. And Pluto will reward that. In ways that will be long-standing, because when Pluto disrupts something, it replants in a very powerful way, sustainable goods. And I do think that that is supported by his sextile to Neptune. But this is all sort of, in many ways, this is about really connecting with my team, trusting the laws of attraction, the laws of ebb and flow, as much as we trust the law of gravity. We see that Venus is here at 29 degrees, making an opposition to Neptune. And I think this is just a little bit where Neptune appears dreamy, and she's about to go out of she's leaving Virgo, but she's still in that practical phase where she's looking for process. And she may not appreciate Neptune saying the process is to believe. The process is to sit and talk to God and the angels about what you want, not the challenges that you will experience. But she's not comfortable yet. I think she'll feel better when she gets home in Libra to do that, but that won't be till really next month. She'll go on here. Now let me move over where she's moved into her 0 degrees of Libra. Now this is really powerful because when Venus comes over this 2 degrees of Libra, she is conjunct the supergalactic center. So right now she is in orb, a pretty tight orb, to experience her own self as source. And that's what Neptune's been saying all along. Using yourself as source energy, knowing that you are a soul versus a human being, and then applying your soul's intentions on the earth plane will manifest in ways that you cannot imagine. And that's part of the whole transformation that we are walking through as a global society. And it's happening for all of us in our own individual worlds. And I think that's very much evidenced by Pluto and Uranus's transits. So here, I really think that you have a powerful opportunity. Libra is your 6th house of work. And as she enters that house, you can start to transform things or create the relationships or start to nurture relationships that you may have, gone dormant a bit. But it will require bravery and not hanging on something that, well, I haven't talked to that person in a long time. This square here is intimating to me bravery and just the way I'm thinking, and then from that, how I'm showing. I also want to mention very much that the supergalactic center is the theme of it is to come into relationship with the self so that it serves the relationships with others. Understanding that the relationship that we have with ourself, our sense of self-worth, our ability to give ourselves possibilities is very powerful here when Venus is traversing this point. And the South Node is in orb now, it's still kind of a loose orb, but it will get into a tighter orb as it leaves the sign of Libra. So there'll be a strong pull here from the South Node to be egoless to the transformation that is before you, which is to see that the self as source is capable of creating everything it wants when it aligns to that endeavor, rather than aligning to the hurdles, pitfalls, and potential obstacles of that endeavor. So it's a super powerful time. And just we'll real quickly go to the end of the month. And here things are very much still in play. We have Venus has moved a little bit forward, but not, I'm sorry, Mercury's moved a little bit forward, but not a lot, as Mercury's been stationing and contemplating, asserting himself. There's also Venus here exact on the galactic center, super galactic center. So that's really going to be a day of feeling, I mean, I almost feel like it could be polarizing, because those that have seen themselves as source could really feel a powerful pull and a strong sense of self-creation. And yet we've got a lot of squares and a half going on that are just like, we still have this square. Well, I don't want to talk about the moon because it's going to move quickly, but we've got the square here to Mars from Neptune. We've got the opposition from Neptune to Venus. We have Jupiter is making the square to Saturn, which is really the most, that square is very, very powerful. It is, I think the quincunxes from Neptune and Pluto create a really strong underbelly for this aspect to go off, meaning Jupiter and Saturn to go off. So it's a kind of like a 1-2 punch. But if we're aware, then we can use Jupiter's favorable aspects now to Mercury and stand in leadership in my thoughts, you know, versus reactionary. And then we have Chiron offering transformation, you know, transformation from the wound to the gift. But, you know, overall, these are not faint times. I believe those that have incarnated at this time have the as they say, chutzpah, the grit, the tenacity to be part of the change. And I think this is a change for a vibrational alignment to our own co-creation of our experiences. And in that we have a lot of power. So that's it for me for August 2024 for my Tauruses. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please share. And if you'd like to join me Sunday mornings, we do a live, me and our community, we go live and we look at the week ahead's transits and we get the angels' advice for traversing those transits. So please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in September. Have a great month, Taurus.